Hello and welcome to the Changemakers channel, where we discuss changemakers who are impacting the world for the better. Being a change maker is usually about standing up or speaking up about something that can make our world a better place. And it's often going to go against the grain. And today I'm delighted to welcome a woman who is no stranger to going against the grain, Debbie O'Connor, also known as Debbie O, who's a brand strategist and archetype alchemist. Welcome, Debbie, and it's great to have you here today.
Thanks, Lee. We're talking about my favorite topic, so you're going to have to shut me up at some point.
Yeah, they're absolutely my favorite topics too. And I just want to share a behind the scenes moment for everybody that's watching today, because when I first met you, Debbie, as we sat there in a gathering of women in business from all types of businesses and skill sets. And when it was your turn to speak and introduce yourself to our group, I was transfixed listening to your story about how you came to be turning the way that brands are designed on its head completely by leveraging your knowledge of archetypes and so much more. So that whole thing about communicating who we are through our brands and who we help and all of that, but leveraging the archetypes is absolutely amazing. So can you tell us a bit about how you came to be doing something that's so extraordinary and outside of the box?
I must admit, as a graphic designer by trade, that's what I studied, and I've morphed more into the brand strategy side of things. But when I first started my business here in Australia, which was 23 years ago, I really was trying to get the message across that I could help build a brand for a business. And what I found was happening is that every time I sat down in a meeting, the client just wanted to talk about what the logo looked like. And I realized that there was this misunderstanding about what a brand actually is, and that most people just thought it was having a logo. Get a logo, slap it on everything, and that is branding. Well, that's not branding. And so I sat there and I thought, wow, I'm in a bit of a conundrum here, because people are coming to me thinking they're getting a brand, but what they're actually asking for is a logo. And yes, a logo is part of a brand, but it's a teeny tiny little piece of it, right? Brand is so much more than that. And I looked at the situation, I thought, how do I educate clients about what a brand actually is and be able to bring them on a journey so that they understand that we are building something a lot more than just a logo, and the process is a lot more in-depth, and that we're really creating something that's going to have longevity. And it comes down to a simple quote from Jeff Bezos, who started Amazon. He said that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
I
So
love that.
really, I love it. It just really brings it down. So I've been able to strip back that a little bit more. And the way I look at a brand is, a brand for a business is like a reputation for a person. So most people have a reputation with their friends or their family or the general public or their clients. And whether their reputation is about being a cutthroat, CEO that just reaches the top levels, or maybe it's a really kind and nurturing and caring, like a Mother Teresa or Princess Diana kind of personality. It doesn't really matter. They have a reputation about them. Now imagine if we built brands that had a reputation, but it is all underpinned by their personality, right? And this is the piece of the puzzle that when I was looking at my business in the beginning, thinking, how am I going to engage my clients, educate my clients so that they understand this a lot better? I went back to when I was at university. I studied a Bachelor of Fine Arts. I majored in graphic design and photography, but one of my subjects was industrial psychology, and one of my other subjects was philosophy. And I came across Carl Jung. Now, Jung was a psychologist and philosopher in the early 1900s. He studied hundreds and thousands of different personalities, and he determined that there were 12 key archetypes. He called them archetypes. I'm going to call them personalities because we understand what personalities are. A lot of people don't understand what archetypes are. So the word is fairly closely interchangeable. So I'll use the term personalities here. And so he came up with these 12 archetypes that have these defining personality traits. And so if I were to give you an example and say, there's an innocent young maiden, a heroic prince, a ruler over all the land, and a wise old woman. I bet you've conjured up in your mind not only what they look like, but also the personality traits that are associated with them. And
Absolutely.
I'll bet you
Got them immediately.
yeah, immediately, right? And I'll bet you $1 million right now that that innocent maiden does not have short black spiky hair covered in tattoos, walking down the street, kicking over bins and swearing at people. Right? Your
No.
brain is going, no, that's not right. But if I say to you, that's the rebel, you're like, yeah, totally, I get that. So imagine if we took the same framework of archetypes and the personalities and applied them to brands, what kind of connection we start having with the customer, what kind of reputation we can start building.
So much sense what you're saying. It's like, why aren't all branding people doing this? And brands are so nebulous, even for marketing people. So I love what you're doing. Tell us more.
Yeah. And so this was the way that I was going to now connect with my customer. And if we found out what that personality is, if I say to the customer, your brand is the hero. Your brand needs to be motivating and inspiring. Your brand needs to be the one that is encouraging your customer to be their best, do their best. Then it means that now the colors that we choose need to be strong, bold, vibrant colors. The fonts, you can't have nice, wispy little script fonts. It's just not going to fit with that personality, right? The language that now is associated with that brand has to be strong and motivating. You can't have very soft, gentle kind of language. The same with the tone of voice that's going to happen. Let's dive into the kind of culture you would then have with your brand. You know, the whole culture needs to be that vibrant, energetic culture, and all the way through to the experience that you want your customers to have, because that experience is what sits in their memory. It is what is going to make them come back time and time again, because if they've had this amazing experience, they are going to want to experience it again and tell all their friends about it. And so this is how you then build out a brand that then has this reputation. But until you know what your personality is, how do you kind of figure out what that is going to be?
I just think it's so clear, isn't it, for people?
Yeah.
Once you've given them that framework, and then when they're telling their friends about it, it's just landed so clearly for them.
Yeah, and I have just been to Melbourne, and they have this amazing patisserie cafe restaurant called Brunetti's, right? And you walk in there, and they've got these huge glass displays of the most decadent cakes you've ever seen in your life. There's an Aperol bar and just in the corner.
Just get that name down.
Yeah, it's just amazing. You walk in and they've got this patisserie that is just, then you can get like bite-sized little cakes. And as you go further into this cafe restaurant, they've got a whole coffee bar in the center where you order your coffees and your drinks. And then down the side, they've got a whole pizzeria. And then at the back, there's a full-on cocktail bar where they're mixing all these different cocktails. Yeah. But everybody is dressed in white shirts with black bow ties, and they've got their aprons on. Everybody looks very sophisticated. You can see they've thought about every process. And all along the way, there's this decadence, this luxury. It's really seducing you into the space. And all you want to do is buy something and be part of it. And they are the perfect seducer personality. Everything about them is about this surprise and delight and this decadence that is coming through. And I looked at that and I thought, you know what? It seems so obvious. right? I mean, even a lot of the staff were Italian, so they had the whole Italian thing going, right? And so I kind of looked at it and I thought, isn't it so obvious that they should be a seducer? But can I tell you, there have been many patisseries that I've walked into that do not create that same emotion for me as this particular business did, all the way
Wow.
through to how their staff were dressed. So these types of things, understanding what that personality piece is for the business, can completely change how
Mm.
people interact and how people feel, because how they
And
feel is what they're going to say about you.
that's right. And you're making it so easy for people to go from nothing, I don't know, I like green or this type of font, to giving them that personality to house everything or to feed everything that's going to be in the design. That's so incredible. And you've really explained so well how having it covering the culture and that whole brand experience just flows on to confirming and reaffirming how a person's perceiving a brand over and over and over.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
once you know that personality, just things like being able to have a tone of voice, a language for your business. These days, with AI and
Mm.
ChatGPT and people that are churning out a huge amount of content that just sounds like chat, it's bland,
Yeah.
it's boring, and people can pick it up in a heartbeat. And they go, nah, this really doesn't sound like it's authentic. It doesn't sound like it comes from the essence of the brand. And so if you have a language and tone that is really well defined, you can still use AI, use it as a tool,
Mm.
absolutely, but train your AI in your entire brand tone of voice so that what is being created still feels like it's on brand. And I
Yeah.
think that becomes an important thing to understand, that you don't have to get rid of all these amazing tools at our disposal. But if you know how to use them properly by being able to feed the right information in, you are going to get the best results.
Yes, just like having your brand guidelines, isn't it, for like new staff? And you would be doing that with these amazing efficiency tools that
100%.
can help you with your content. And so you said there are 12. What are the 12 personalities or archetypes?
Yeah, so they're 12. I've actually written a book called Brand Magic. And what I've done, because I've worked with archetypes for such a long time, I've used the 12 Jungian archetypes, but then I've broken them up into 6 additional family members. When you ask the question, I don't understand why every agency is not using archetypes. The reason is because a lot of them feel that they can be prescriptive,
Mhm.
that just being a caregiver, not everyone needs to be a caregiver, but when we break up the caregiver into the parent, into the mother, into these different
Mm.
personalities, we then start getting different nuances that start coming through. And so, yes, they're the main 12, and I'll tell you what they are. But I actually have the 12 as well as
Mm.
72 additional ones to be able to create real nuance with your
Yeah,
brand.
like
So
subset.
we've got the caregiver, which is all about being gentle, kind, altruistic, supportive, that type of thing. I should also point out that when you are finding out what your brand personality is, one of the biggest tips that I have to give people is that it's not about what you do, it's about
Mm.
how you do it.
Mm.
And the reason why I say that is, if we take the caregiver as an example, every business, if we were to go, oh, well, because you're a vet, because you're a dentist, you must be the caregiver because you're offering care. That's your service offering. But if every vet and every dentist had exactly the same personality, imagine how boring it would be. There would be
Mm.
nobody who stands out, nobody who's different. So instead, focusing on how you do things and how you want to make people feel is more important than what you do, right? So keep that in mind. So we've got the caregiver. After the caregiver, we've got, and I'm just going in sort of alphabetical order as I remember it,
Yes,
we've
yes.
got the creator. So the creator is unique, very different, out of the box thinker. They are usually the people that stand out in a room. You can often see them because they're dressed so differently, perhaps, or they just think differently and behave differently. Then we've got the entertainer. The entertainer is fun, light-hearted, frivolous. They don't care about airs and graces. They have a lot of fun, and sometimes there might be like this chaos around them, but people are drawn to it because of the humor that goes around with it. There's the explorer. Now, the explorer is a bit of a daredevil, a thrill seeker. They're often very self-directed, self-sufficient, pioneering, going to places that other people haven't been. So when I say that, I'm not necessarily meaning the road less traveled as in the, Himalayas. I'm
Yeah.
talking about even in business or
Mm.
life itself. They are embracing all of that, and they don't mind pushing the boundaries in creating something that other people are scared of. Whereas for them, they find a thrill out of that type of thing. Then we've got the innocent. Now, the innocent is happy and optimistic. They just want harmony in the world. These are our peacekeepers. They see the glass as half full, where everyone else might see the glass as half empty. So an example might be when it's raining and miserable outside, everyone's like, oh, it's raining and I can't go out. Whereas for them, they're like, oh, just imagine all this rain for the flowers. They're just going to love it, right? Those people who are so optimistic and so positive. Then we've got the hero. So the hero is your motivator. These ones are inspiring you to be the best that you can be, very encouraging. They're your cheerleaders. Then we have the magician. So the magician is all about transformation, being a catalyst for change, being able to see possibilities where others see impossibility. These are the ones who they just have this uncanny ability to be able to almost be a visionary for the future. Then we have our neighbor, down to earth, practical. Let's roll up the sleeves, get things done, very welcoming, as in, oh yeah, come and join us. And they are not scared to get their hands dirty. There are no airs and graces. What you see is what you get. They call a spade, right? Then we have the rebel. And the rebel is the one who's shaking up the status quo. They are doing things differently because they believe that there's fundamentally a better way of doing it. And just by towing the line is not their way of doing it. So they're highly liberated. They don't mind shocking people. So these are brands where you might hear the F-bomb being thrown around, right? Because they don't care if they shock people. Gordon Ramsay, he's a chef, but he doesn't care how he behaves, right? Then we have the ruler, and the ruler is very much take charge, in control, efficient, highly productive, the pinnacle of success, right? And you can imagine that they have a very different energy to them because they are always so in control. We have the sage. Now, the sage is your thinker, your philosopher, your expert. They're the advisor in the room. They tend to be very knowledgeable. You often know you're talking to a sage because you listen to the half of their conversation and you're like, man, I need a dictionary to figure out what's just gone on here. Right? Highly intelligent, but for them, knowledge and truth are of the utmost importance in the kind of work that they do. And then last but not least, we have the seducer. And the seducer is all about that intimacy, that decadence. Maybe sometimes a little bit of luxury comes into it. Something that is very special, making their customers feel very special. So they're often very relationship orientated. So they are all beautiful. Like you can't get a dud. I've had people say to me, but what if I get like a bad one? I'm like, there's no such thing as a bad one. If you're working with a brand strategist, graphic designer, web developer, copywriter who understands archetypes, they will be able to create one for you that is just magical, right? And so it's about understanding what that personality is and then committing to it wholeheartedly. Yes. And it stops you from going off and chasing all those shiny little objects.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it just makes it so simple because a lot of people don't do their brands very well, or they just don't do them and they don't think it's very necessary. And it certainly is to assist with that whole thing of supporting the reputational development or communication and the way that people, well, the way that something's so memorable. Brunetti's was such a good example.
Yeah. And,
Fascinating, wasn't it?
one of my other favorite brands, well, there are a couple, I'll give you two examples
Mm.
because I think if I tell the stories about these brands, it makes sense to people as well. So in Australia, we have a brand called Who Gives a Crap. And
Yep.
they have gone internationally. So Who Gives a Crap? It's a toilet paper brand. That's all it is. They sell toilet paper. So they could be any kind of personality. If we take in Australia, who one of their competitors would be is Quilton.
Mm.
And Quilton, they've gone down the whole caregiver route. Their brand is very much, they use like a little baby,
Baby.
like
Yeah.
a little Cupid baby, and everything's about soft and pampering and that
Mm.
kind of stuff. Whereas Who Gives a Crap is very much, even in the name, they are the entertainer.
Yes.
They are there, they're lighthearted. They take, excuse the pun, they take the piss out of everything. And even their blog is called Talking Crap. However, they are doing real good in the world, right? 80% of their profits go towards building sanitation in third world
Mm.
countries. So they're doing
Mm.
some really good, serious stuff. But how they go about it, how they engage people is so fun and frivolous and light-hearted, but they're still doing really good work. But when you see Who Gives a Crap, even the name, it's the whole pun
Yeah.
around the whole, well, if you give a crap, then you need to buy our toilet paper
Yeah.
because we do all this good in the world, right? And who doesn't give a crap? Like
Yeah.
literally in the real world.
I
So
absolutely know, but it's so deeply thought out, but it's done and executed in such a simple way.
exactly. And so when you look at that, it's just toilet paper. That's it. It's
Mm.
just toilet paper. Let's not be so deep. But when we look at the brand, it's like,
Mm.
man, they are so clever. It is just everything oozes personality, which I
Yeah.
love. The
Mm.
second example I'm going to give is it's a rebel brand. They are called Liquid Death. Okay, Liquid Death. It's water. They sell water in a can, but they have designed the cans. They've got a skull on the front, and they've designed these cans so they look like a mother kind of drink or
Yeah.
a Red Bull or something along
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
lines, so that kids, when they go to school, they can smash a Liquid Death and feel cool while getting water, right? And so all of their branding is about being edgy and shaking up the status quo and doing things differently, because the current way of selling water and getting people to drink water is not working.
No,
So let's do it a different way. We can fundamentally see a better way of doing it.
they've
And
been so successful.
so successful. I love their brand. Everything
Mm.
about it. I'm like, well done, guys. It's
Yes,
amazing. Yeah.
absolutely. I love those examples because I just can't get past how deeply thought through they are. It's so cleverly executed. So
And
great
it's not
example.
about the logo.
And
This is the
yeah, I'm with
thing.
you.
Like the logo is a piece of that puzzle, but
Yeah.
it's not about the logo. It's
It's
about
almost
this
like the
bigger
icing
thing.
on the cake, isn't it?
Yeah. It's this bigger message. It's this
Yeah.
bigger experience that they're creating for their customer. That is the brand. That is why
Mm.
we're talking about it,
Mm.
because they've done this so, so well.
Wow. I love how you've made it something that people can almost take a self-reflection about the personality aspect and then develop the brand. So how can they find out more about your brand personalities?
So I have a website called
Oh, great.
brandpersonalities.com. There we go. Nice and easy.
So
So if
brandpersonalities.com.
yes, that's right. And it has all of the 12 different personalities on there. They can get some information. They can actually take an online test.
Mhm.
It is a pay to play test. It's only
Yep.
$39, but
Yep.
the results that they get are a huge amount of content and information around that. But
Mm.
also, you get to take the test twice. So if,
Oh.
for example, you are building out your business brand, you can take the test for your business. But if you're building a personal brand as
Mm.
well, you
Wow.
might want to take the personal brand
That's
test.
genius.
And so you can do both, or you might go, well, I'll do the business test as an example. I'll take it and see what the result is, and then I'll do it again and answer questions slightly differently and see that you can get a different result
Wow,
as
that
well.
is fantastic. And it's very easy to just line and sign up and do. And you've got your book, Brand Magic.
I do. So Brand Magic, the book, itself we became an Amazon #1 bestseller when we first launched, and we've actually won a Sydney Design Award for the
Oh
design
my
of the book.
goodness.
It's very visual. So what we've done in the book is every chapter that is based on the personality has been designed using the type of colors and fonts you would use for
Mm.
that kind of personality. So each chapter is supposed to be a different experience as you're then going through the book and reading about the different personalities.
Mm. That's fantastic. So you've got the website where people can read more, they can pay and do the test, they can also check out the book. And do you have a school or an academy or anything like that?
I do. And look, I get a lot of creatives. So, brand strategists, graphic designers, copywriters, marketers, PR companies, even interior designers and fashion people who do styling who are interested in finding out how they can use the system in their business. So, I've got a Brand Archetype Academy, which I run 3 times a year.
Mm.
And this is really for people to do a very deep dive. They will learn about all the different personalities, actually all 84 of them. So the 12 key archetypes,
Yep.
and you also get the 6 additional family members. But more importantly, it's about how do you find that personality for your client? And then once you know what that personality is, what do you do then? A lot of people will come to me and
Mm.
go, well, Deb, a client has just come to me and they've told me that they are the ruler, but I actually don't know what to do with that. And so this is where the academy helps with that part of it to say, okay, now that you know this information, how do you actually actively apply it to building out a brand?
Wow. That is amazing that you've gone into so much detail in the academy. And so the website for that is brandarchetypeacademy.com, is it? They can find
That's
out about then. And it's 3 times a year. That's brilliant. And I know what I'm perceiving from all of this work that you've done and how you've packaged it up and how you've made it so accessible for everybody. How do you think it's empowering people who are either the owner of a brand that hasn't been birthed or those that are the professionals working at there? How do you think you're empowering it? How would you describe that?
I see it happen a lot that when the business owner is clear about what their brand is, it makes it so much easier for their staff to get on board.
Mm.
If the owner of the business has no idea what the brand is supposed to look like, sound like, behave like, then there's absolute chaos because everyone just does their own thing. I worked with an organization a couple of years ago, 70 different staff they had, and they did not have any kind of structure around communication. So, what I mean by that is nobody knew how to respond to an email. As in, do I say, Dear Mr. Jones, Dear John, Hi John, G'day mate? Like, there was no structure around it whatsoever. Just as much at the end of an email. Like, are people saying, yours sincerely, kind
Mm.
regards, see you later? There was no structure whatsoever, which meant that every email that went out had a different way of communicating from 70 different people.
Oh dear.
Now, that is a lot of brand damage that happens, but that's because no one knew any
Mm.
better. No one was told, well, this is the structure that we like to work with. This is how we like to communicate with people. This is how we want them to feel. So,
Mm.
because of that, this is how we start our emails, how we end our emails.
Mm.
In fact, this particular business didn't even have a proper email signature. So, email signatures were going out left, right, and center, all so different. It was chaotic. And this
Wow.
is the problem. If you don't have a strategy in place, then chaos will reign.
Yep.
But even by
Behind
having
that.
a simple strategy,
Yeah.
as in, this is our personality, this is how we talk, this is how we communicate, this is how we write our blogs or our emails, this is how we answer our phone, this is how we want our customers to feel, and this is the experience we're going to create for them, that can completely change a business.
Absolutely love it. And the idea of total chaos and all of these different styles and tones and messages and things just firing off everywhere, that just sounds totally cringeful. So thank you for really highlighting how in so many ways it simplifies the process of creating the brand, but then delivering it, and without it, it's just going to be total chaos. And nobody wants to be conveying chaos to potential prospects.
No, and the
where it
other
just
thing
doesn't look
is,
professional.
you don't want to
Better.
create different experiences for different customers,
Yeah.
because if I have recommended a customer because of an experience I've had, the last thing I want is for them to go to that same place and have an entirely different experience. And it happens a lot. You know, you have a great experience at a restaurant, you recommend someone to go to the restaurant, they go and they come back and they go, I don't know what you were talking about. It was terrible.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that could simply be that there's a different manager on and they do things differently because they have not been given any form, structure, or direction as to how things need to be done.
Oh, you make it feel so easy and sounds so much lighter. I think people feel resistance to creating their brand if they're somebody who's starting out with that type of thing, or they've been winging it for a while, and you make it so much more accessible for everybody and giving them the tools to work with their designers and that sort of thing. And so thank you so much for sharing how it all came about and what it is to be exploring brand personalities. And do you have any last parting messages for us, or something to inspire us around getting over that resistance to creating and defining our brand?
Yeah, look, if you decide that you don't want to do the online test, because I know
Mm,
that for some people they're like
mm,
$39, I don't want to spend that money, and that's absolutely fine, no judgment. But there are a couple of things that I'm going to give you some tips when you're
mm.
thinking about what kind of personality your brand is. Firstly, you need to decide, is this a business brand that I'm building out, or is it a personal brand? So a lot of people get confused about that, especially if they're a single operator. They're like, well, it's me, I'm the business brand. The easiest way to define, is it a business brand or a personal brand, is, do you have a name that is not yours? If it's not your name, if it's ABC Books, as an example, you're building a business brand. But if the name of the business has your name in it, it is a personal brand because it's based on you. Only you can be you.
So true. You know, when I was a consultant, white marketing consultants, and today, PR presence program, totally different. Wow.
Totally,
Yes,
totally different.
absolutely. Yeah.
And so if you're able to think about it like that, you will then know, okay, I'm doing a business brand, so I need to do that test, a personal brand. The
Mm.
questions are different because it's based on your own self.
Oh, that simplifies it so much.
Yeah, and if you are a business brand, the thing you have to remember the whole way through is, ask yourself, is this me or is this my brand? So every time a question is asked and you've got a series of all these words in front of you that you can choose, you are naturally going to go to what you are connected with. But you have to separate yourself from
Mm.
your brand, unless it's your
Mm.
personal brand. So
Mm.
separate yourself from your brand, because there's nothing harder for any staff to have to come into work and have to try and be the boss.
Yes.
You don't want them to have that personality. So, for
Mm.
example, Richard Branson has a
Mm.
different brand person. His personal brand is very different to Virgin.
Mm.
Richard Branson is what we call the explorer, whereas Virgin is very much the rebel.
Yeah. Do you think there's any crossover? Like, you can see that he's the kind of guy that made a brand that's a rebel.
Oh, absolutely. Connection pieces.
That's
So, for
interesting.
example, you'll see with the Explorer, they do like the thrill, they like being self directed, they like being pioneers. Whereas the Rebel, on the other hand, they are still pioneering, but they're doing it in a much
Mm.
more aggressive way.
Yeah.
They are shaking things out. They're being very deliberate in the
Mm.
fact that they are changing the way things are being done.
Yeah.
And so there are slight crossovers, but they are
Mm.
completely different.
Oh, I love that. Gosh, you know, it's a little bit dangerous getting you and I together to talk about this, because we both love the philosophy, the psychology, the branding, the changing the world. We could talk all day, couldn't we?
Absolutely. That's why I
Thank,
said you're going to have to shut me up at some
yeah.
point.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure everyone will find this so illuminating and be able to get into action for their brand, and just to be able to have a much better understanding of branding as well, if there are people that, if it's new to them. Definitely. Well, thanks again. And we really appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lee. This has been absolutely amazing.